Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And we are sat here as we are about to hit record. We saw some breaking news out of Angel City, so we're just going to jump right in. Obviously, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, it's not breaking, because it's breaking at the time of recording. But out of Angel City, let's get our quick reactions from this, Allie. Becky Tweed, the head coach, was just fired. Days after Angela Huckles, I believe that's how you pronounce her last name, who was the GM, was fired. We all know as well that Ehrman's still suspended because of everything that Angel City went through with the salary cap stuff. My initial reaction to this is I think it was the right move to let go of the GM, wrong move to let go of Becky Tweed. This was only her first season as acting head coach. She was interim head coach this season at the end of the season before, but she's only had 1 year, and I think they should have given her more time.
Yeah, it feels like this year the NWSL have been really big on just getting rid of coaches really quickly and like pulling the trigger. Like you said, she had a year at Angel City and it was a respectable finish. I know it wasn't what they would have wanted, but it was respectable. They didn't have the disaster that Houston had, for example. And you know what? Give her some time to bed in her players and what she wants. You know, we've got the first year without the draft, so they can actually have a choice of players coming in. I think it's rash, really rash that they've let her go.
Unless they're playing the ultimate.
Oh, here we go.
They're playing the ultimate card. There's my unless is the same for every single team right now in terms of head coaches, and it is unless they're bringing in Casey Stoney.
Always Casey
Can
Stoney.
you imagine, though, if LA, of all places, brought in Casey Stoney? And I mean, there's already the LA-San Diego rivalry-ish going on. And for them to bring in Casey Stoney would be wild. Let me just say up front, that is not even a rumor. I'm not trying to start the rumor. I'm just saying, how fun would that be?
Let's start the rumor because she was in San Diego recently. She posted about being back at San Diego FC and stuff. So maybe let's start the rumor.
I'm still holding out hope for her to go to Arsenal, which this is still the intro. We're going to talk so much WSL today, everybody. It's going to be a blast, and we're going to end it with Euros. But before we get into that, we have two more things to discuss. And one of them is a surprise to Allie because they think there's only one more thing to discuss.
Yeah, I'm well confused.
Here we go. I watched Se Acabó, the Netflix documentary on the Spanish national team and their whole journey. First things first, there is a way to watch it with their normal voices.
Hey, how'd you do that? I think our listeners will want to know that because let me tell you, the dubbing was awful.
So for those who don't know, Allie watched it and it was dubbed into English. And they were like, if I have one gripe, it's the fact that I had to watch it dubbed. And I hated that. You just go down to where you would put subtitles on Netflix and you can put subtitles on. You can change it back to the original language that it was in. You can literally change the language that you watch it in. So maybe that's like very, old. Maybe that's like millennial of me that I didn't know that. And some people are listening are like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. But for those who didn't know, like Allie, that's how you can do it. I watched it this morning. I just finished it like 30 minutes ago. And I am still kind of reeling from the emotions. What a fantastic documentary, first of all. That was so good. And second, yeah, I feel like I just went through the entire wave of emotions of like the 2 years leading up to the World Cup plus the months after in like an hour and a half. It was so many feelings. I feel like Bon Mati had a couple of fantastic quotes. She said at the beginning, quote, "It felt like our win was overshadowed and tarnished." And then she said, "With women's football, I had the feeling that the Federation had a women's football team because they had to." It was just incredible. And as if I could have, I didn't think I could have any more respect for these players and what they've been through than I already had. And then going through it again, I was like, oh my gosh, somehow I just have even more respect for them. And I know we all knew how toxic that federation was, but to see it play out on the screen and to hear them talk about it and to learn new details and the depths of toxicity and control that existed and still exists, which is the disappointing thing. Like the documentary really wraps up in a nice way, but we know that since then, Bon Mati's come out and said like nothing's changed. among other things, it's disappointing to watch a lot of things in that documentary. But I do think that like the depths of control and toxicity, it's truly like a very, very toxic relationship, essentially. And I think the fact that Olga Carmona was still, as she was being interviewed for this documentary, she outright said that she was still, she was too scared to give her own thoughts and opinions on the documentary, and so she wasn't going to. She said that to the camera. That says everything.
Yeah, I always thought for me, it was the beginning of the documentary that was the most fascinating bit, which was the build up and like the strike and the letters and like how that all played out, and the fact that they were spied on by their own federation and like somebody had hacked into their phones and like that's why it got leaked. And that for me, I mean, as horrific as what happened to Jenny was, that we saw sort of play out in real time. It was the build up in this documentary for me that was the most fascinating, because it's the bit I knew the least about.
Yeah, I also loved rewatching kind of what we saw play out in real time, though, because it's been a year, more than, or almost exactly, I guess. And I think it's easy to forget how powerful that moment was and how emotional it really was for everybody. And to kind of feel that again and to revisit and relive the power of it in a really positive way, that part was wonderful. All right, you take us through the final piece, Allie.
So yeah, the final piece is we are giving you a heads up on our holiday break. Yes, it is. The winter break is coming up. So you will get one more episode after this one. That will go out on the 18th of December.
It's my birthday.
So it will come out on Sarah's birthday on the 18th. And then we are going to take about a month off, and then we will be back on the 15th of January to give you the preview of the WSL that's restarting, as well as a catch up on the FA Cup fourth round games that will have happened that weekend.
We're going to kick it off with the WSL. Now that the NWSL is over, shed a tear, it's done overshadowing the WSL, because let's be honest, it has been this year. But now we get to focus completely on the WSL, and we're excited about it. And this weekend, I think, was pretty much like a good picture of what the WSL has been. There weren't a lot of close games, but in my opinion, the best one was Chelsea hosting Brighton. And I think in any other year, this would have been a game that I might not even check the score of. I just been like, okay, and that's a game. That's a win for Chelsea. Brighton are having a great year. They put up a fight. I was so impressed with them. They were never in the lead, but it really did come close. And 4-2 doesn't give a good picture of how this game was. They were within one goal for the majority of the game, and Chelsea just kind of finished it off in like the 90th minute. But there were moments where it looked like Brighton were about to do something special and equalize.
So first, to your point, in my very biased opinion, I'm going to say that you're entitled to your wrong opinion about the best game.
Go ahead, and you're entitled to your biased opinion. Let's hear it.
So obviously I'm going to say West Ham Crystal Palace, and a quick sneaky plug for our Patreon listeners, me and Mike will be talking about that game on the other 8, which will be dropping this week on Patreon. So I'm just going to get a sneaky plug into that. But in terms of excitement, it was a West Ham game. But in terms of what it shows how the league has been this year, I will say that Chelsea and Brighton was the like quintessential pinnacle of what the WSL has been doing so far.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it also brings up the question, because now we look at the table, right? And Chelsea are sitting undefeated across 9 games. They haven't even drawn. They've won 9 games of 9 games. They sit with 27 points at the top of the table, 6 points ahead of City, who are in second place right now. They already also have a head-to-head victory against City. Are Chelsea this good, or has everyone else at the top of the table just fallen off?
The latter, for sure. Chelsea, this is not even a great Chelsea side in terms of playing and performance. Like, they're good, but this is not like top class, Chelsea of a couple of seasons ago. And even Chelsea fans will say that. Gilly Flaherty, who's an ex-Chelsea player, was saying last night that, you know what, they're still sloppy in midfield. They give the ball away. It's how Brighton managed to get 2 goals back. They almost got an equaliser when it was 3-2 because of some sloppy play from playing out at the back. It's not even the best Chelsea we have seen in recent years. But it also feels like Man City, who we were saying at the beginning of this season, it's this season, it's their season, this is the season that they're going to take it, have played well. They've been playing good, but not good enough. Arsenal have had such a fall off, it's untrue.
I would argue City have been worse than they were last year. City were a better team last year. I think Arsenal were a better team last year, although they've just been kind of like average for a while now. And then, United, again, the drop-off has been pretty steep for them.
And I think that's why Chelsea are running away with it, because the drop-off below them has been extraordinary. It's not like, a couple of iffy games and we're back in it and things like that. No, the drop-off has been so noticeable, and that is why Chelsea are running away with it.
Yeah, it's disappointing because I feel like if Chelsea didn't exist at the top of the table, we'd be looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, we've got like, a 4-team race for the title, but instead Chelsea are just running away with it. And we have a 4-team race for second, third, I guess just second and third place for the 2 other Champions League spots. But I feel like this leads us to the bigger question, which is, when you look at the WSL, we usually have like a 2-team race. Let's be honest. It's rarely a 3-team race. It's usually a 2-team race for the title. But it's never been over in my memory, in at least recent history, it's never been over before January. And this year feels different. Yeah, it's 6 points and that's 2 games. That's really the difference between Chelsea and City, but it does not feel like City are going to catch Chelsea whatsoever. And this year feels particularly bad for the top of the table, although very, very good for the middle and bottom of the table, which is super fun and why we created the Patreon show, The Other 8, that you just referenced. But I want to talk about the WSL as a whole because the table looks different this year. What has changed?
I don't know, is the honest answer. It feels very meh.
Yeah. We've used the word boring before to describe it so far this year.
Yeah, it's boring. It's meh. It's just not thrilling in those games at the moment. And it's not even just the results, because I feel like Chelsea could be running away with the league. And if the other teams were playing better football, it wouldn't feel this bleh. I watch Man City and it's uninspiring. I watch Arsenal and it's uninspiring. I watch Man United and it's really uninspiring. Like, I watched what should have been a cracking game of Man United versus Arsenal, and it was one of the most boring games I've ever been to in my life. It was playing out from the back. It was lots of Skinner ball, as they're calling it, but it was, defenders passing it between themselves back to the goalkeeper. And we mentioned this before, so I'm going to say it again for old people who remember The Simpsons. Remember The Simpsons episode where they reference, you don't, because you never watched it, but other people will watch it. Remember The Simpsons episode where they talk about football, or soccer, as they call it, and it's like, passes to this player, goes back to the keeper, passes to this player, he holds it, he holds it, he holds it. And it's just literally some of the most boring football I've watched. And I don't expect that from top of the table teams. You expect it to be gritty and
dynamic and free flowing and not predictable. It's so predictable right now. By the way, whenever you say like blah, blah, football or soccer, I'm like, you didn't have to say that. It's such a low blow every time.
It's because the amount of grief I get from my British friends when they're like, oh, you've got a podcast, what's it called? I'm like, The Women's Soccer Show. And they're like, soccer? I was like, I didn't name it.
You can tell them that the initial name was It's Not Called Soccer Pod. And that's an inside scoop for our listeners. That was the initial name. I don't know. I agree with everything you just said. I think it's really hard to put my finger on exactly what's happened. I think what we just talked about is a big part of it. It looks different because, like you just said, the teams that are at the top of the table usually are just kind of bad this year. I think it's, in a way, potentially a little bit of growing pains from the middle of the table becoming more and more competitive. For example, we already talked about Brighton. Tottenham are a solid middle of the table team finally after being a middle to bottom of the table team. Liverpool, I feel like, are proving themselves as potentially being able to make a run for the middle of the table. I'd even loop in United are kind of middle of the table at this point right now. Actually, not really. Now that I'm looking at the table, they're locked on with Arsenal. But Arsenal, I suppose, are as well. Like, the middle of the table looks different, and the middle of the table teams are stronger now. It used to be almost like a separation of we have a chunk at the top and a chunk at the bottom. There's not really a middle. We have like a solid middle now. So I feel like there's slight growing pains from that. And then it's that mixed with what we just talked about of these teams that usually are at the top. They're actually now in the middle. And they've just fallen off. I don't know. I have to say, it's not great for the league in general and probably for viewership when the most exciting thing is the bottom of the table. Like, it's exciting at the end of the year, but let's be real. Nobody wants to tune in and watch technically two of the worst teams in the league face each other because it's just not as good football. I feel like that offended some people, including you. I knew it was going to happen as I said it.
It did offend. I was going to say, it did offend me because I was like, as I mentioned, the best game was 5-2 West Ham win against Crystal Palace. You have to agree that, like, in a year where, for example, if you had like City at its best right now and Chelsea at its best, that Chelsea City game is going to be such a bigger draw for the league than like a West Ham Crystal Palace game. It just is. Right? For like the casual fan. I'm talking about just like for the benefit of the league, for the benefit of viewership. The same way we talked about for the NWSL final. Like, we want a good game because that's when the casual fan tunes in and we want like a good product out there. It's just a little worse for the league right now that the most exciting storyline is between some of the worst teams. Yeah, I was going to say, it's fun for like the diehards. It may be less fun for those that are just tuning in to watch Lionesses or whatever. I think probably it just came to me, a flash of inspiration why I think that this year it's particularly terrible, is that the traditional top four teams had one of the worst transfer windows in the summer that I have seen in a long time. They lost a lot of key players. We definitely saw that with Man United. We also saw it with Man City and Arsenal, and they didn't replace well. There was no good replacement. So I know for a fact that Man City tried to get a really good defender to replace ones that they lost, and then she did her ACL in at the Olympics. So it was, and they spent a lot of that budget, so therefore they didn't really. So they're just, it's been the most lackluster transfer window, which I feel like has led to that gulf, because Chelsea already had enough players that they didn't need. Like, they put in a couple of, like, obviously Lucy Bronze has been fantastic for them, but they put in a couple of, cherries on top of an already well-decorated cake. Whereas the others were missing the sugar of a cake, which has just made it crumble and very bitter. So we are going to do something which is quite rare for us, but we're going to go with it anyway. We're going to drop down a tier in the English football pyramid, and we're going to talk the Championship, because if you want a league that is competitive, this is the league you should be watching. And it's been announced, starting next year, from next season, all of the Championship games will be on YouTube. They will be streamed live. They are promising there'll be at least 2 cameras at each match, which is very important from anybody who remembers the early days of the FA Player with the 1 camera.
But not even, or just like anybody who watched the Chelsea Brighton game with me this past weekend on YouTube. Oh my goodness. It made me miss the FA Player. Let's just say that.
That takes some doing. So you guys will be able to watch this really exciting league all around the world from next season. And yeah, you want that competitive spirit. This is the league.
Oh, this is going to be great, because already there have been multiple times where we've talked so much about the London City Lionesses, and they have some world-class talent on that team, like Aslani. I wanted to tune in and watch them. And on most given weekends, I cannot do that. There is nowhere that I could watch that game. So finally, every game is going to be available every weekend for the Championship on YouTube next season, not this season. Sorry, everybody. I'm so excited. I think this is going to be wonderful. And this is a benefit of NewCo, which has lumped the WSL and the championship together. So now they're all under the same governing body. This is bringing the championship up. And I think this is going to help raise the level across the board as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm super excited because there are some great teams, and you always want to keep an eye on how the pyramid's doing, and slowly it's becoming equitable, which is enjoyable. But the reason why we're so excited that you will be able to watch it from next season is because this season it is insanely tight. There is just 5 points at the moment between Birmingham City, who are currently top of the league, and Charlton, who are 8th. This is how close it is. Like, okay, there's a couple of teams underneath that unfortunately aren't doing as great. But
I feel like you have to restate that because that's crazy. 5 points between the number 1 and the number 8 right now. That is literally 8 teams who are fully in contention of winning the championship.
Correct.
That is crazy.
I was going to say, so you want to talk about close, you want to talk about you don't know what's going to happen each week. This is the league for you because genuinely you do not know what is happening. Like right now, you've got Birmingham Durham equal on points. It is literally goal difference. It's a 6 goal difference that is keeping Durham off the top spot.
If it's 8 teams, 5 points, it's going to be goal difference for a lot of these. Yeah. Love it. I do feel like once a year we get to take a moment. We have the space to highlight the championship. And this is that week where we get to use this space a little bit with international being over for the year, with NWSL being over for the year. We get to take a moment and dive into this. So, and I love a little good news.
You do love a good bit of news.
In talking about the championship, we just talked about the WSL. One of these is really competitive at the top. One of them is not really competitive at the top. What do you think the difference is here between these 2 leagues? And I feel like we're going to say the same thing, but I'm curious what you think first.
So for me, I think one of the biggest factors within the championship we're seeing is budget is not a massive factor for these teams comparatively. Obviously, there are teams that have bigger budgets. We've talked about Michelle Kang and her investment in the London City Lionesses. That is a huge injection of cash right there, and we can see that with the players they've signed with Aslani Jakobsen and players like that. Newcastle are another team that had a massive cash injection from the new owners that came in and bought Newcastle completely.
I think we did a Patreon about that, right? Yeah, we did. The dirty money that came into Newcastle.
The dirty money. But like you see that with Furness and Stokes have gone to Newcastle, and that's a great thing. But for most of the teams, budgets are very similar, which means that you get players of very similar calibers on each team. So therefore, it does feel more of a competition because it's not that, stacked Chelsea side that's got World Cup winners and Euros winners and, Champions League winners that they can buy for fun in the top team. Birmingham City's squad is pretty similar to the squad that got them relegated a couple of seasons ago. But it's such an competitive field because it's all feels on such an equal caliber compared to the other league.
Same. It's all about the money. It's all about the kashish. It's literally the fact that it's this disparity between the team that has the most funds available and the team that has the least amount of funds available. The disparity in the WSL between those 2 teams is astronomical, and it's not as big in the championship. Another reason I think that NWSL implemented that budget cap, that salary cap that they implemented, which would be interesting to see maybe a WSL under that, but I actually think that would negatively impact the league since one of the big draws is the fact that big players can get big money. And finally, to cap off our across the pond moment, a little bit of news, not super positive, but we have to come back with another news update about Manchester United because I think we've been following them and tracking what is the colossal disaster of the ownership of this club for a while now. But I think what really kicked it off for us was when the women got moved out of their own training facility because the men needed to use it. And we've been following it ever since. And there's a brand new lovely update. Not so lovely, but we're going to keep it short. And these things are always just good to know and be updated on. And again, something that has gotten zero press. I haven't gotten to read a ton about it over here. So I also think it's important to give light to. And Allie agrees.
I do. I brought this. So, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who is a major stakeholder in Manchester United, gave an interview to a fan magazine of Man United. And I think because it wasn't like official media, in air quotes, he sort of said a lot more than he meant to, and he definitely said the quiet part out loud. So he basically...
I feel like he's said the quiet part out loud to big media too, though, for the record. Like, just in the past.
So he basically was talking about the fact that he feels like Man United are not the big powerhouse that they once were, and that they are mediocre, and that they need to, not live on past glories. Fair enough. He then stated, and this is a quote, "There is only so much that you can do, and our focus has been on the men's team. If not, you get spread too thinly. We need to sort out the main issue, the men's team. The women's team is an opportunity."
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. I mean, I'm almost glad that it's being said out loud. What would you prefer? Would you prefer that, or would you prefer the like thinly veiled, we're gonna fake like we actually care, but we don't actually care? Which is an interesting tie back into what I said that Bonmati literally said about the Spanish Federation, which is that it felt like they had a women's team because they had to at this point in time.
And it very much does feel like that. It does feel like Man United got one because there was a lot of pressure on them to get one because they were one of the biggest clubs in the world that didn't have one at the time. And it does feel that. It just feels like wording. Like, you can say that and be a bit less blunt about it, I think.
I mean, can you imagine how players feel reading that?
Well, that's it. That's the thing. And like, talking of players, Katie Zellum did an interview and talked about the fact that the reason she left was because she knew that the women's team weren't a priority for the club. And you see that. I mean, one of the biggest things was the two things is one, that Sir Jim didn't go to the FA Cup final that they were in. It was a chance for Man United to win silverware for the first time in a long time as the club as a whole, but the first piece of silverware since being promoted that the women could have won. He instead went to a game at Old Trafford that the men were playing at the same time. And then the other thing, which is most recently come out, is that Dan Ashworth, who was the sporting director who had been focusing on the women's team, has been fired. And he has been in the club for 4 months. He was taken from Newcastle. He came at the beginning of the season. He's been there for 4 months and he has been let go, all to do with cost cutting and everything else. So it very much, it's to be honest, if I was a Man United fan, and we've talked about this a lot, I would be so disheartened because it's clear that your club does not care and you're going to lose players again.
Well, yeah, we saw this coming a mile away. We saw this coming a long time ago when we started saying players are not going to want to join your club, and you're going to start leaking players who have the opportunity to go play in an environment where they actually feel valued, because they will. The moment they have that chance, they will. And here we are. And we'll just continue to see United fall down the table. And who knows, eventually maybe the women will end up as far down the table as the men are right now. I don't even follow the English Premier League, and I know that United's men are absolutely atrocious right now.
No, so we will keep you updated the more that happens with Man United. But for the moment, it does feel very much like it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Incredibly disappointing for a club who started out with Casey Stoney building an incredible team, an incredible start in the WSL, and could have gone so far and had that inflection point. And instead of going up and continue to rise, they're going to continue to fall. And it's a disservice to the fans. It's a disservice to all of women's football, to be totally honest with you. And it's a disservice to their players, first and foremost, as well. Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
to France. A 3-0 win this weekend for Lyon has allowed for some breathing space for the French side. They are currently 3 points clear of closest rivals PSG, who could only manage a draw this weekend. Paris FC are in third, but they are falling away from the pack, leaving this league to become a 2-horse race.
And to Italy, Juventus are currently top of the table with 32 points and 10 wins, including a tight 3-2 win over Lazio this weekend. It is a much tougher scrap between second place Fiorentina and third place Internazionale with just 1 point in it. Who will get the all-important Champions League place?
To Germany, and the German league could not be any closer as we come to the winter break. The top 3 teams all have 8 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. All have 26 points, and it is just goal difference that separates them. Top dog currently is Eintracht Frankfurt, then it's Bayern Munich, followed by Bayer Leverkusen in third.
And finally, to Spain, Barcelona are still undefeated this weekend, marking their 12th win of the season. Second place is hotting up, though, between the 2 Madrid teams as they have swapped places. Real are now second after a win this weekend, whereas Atletico Madrid have fallen to third as they could only muster a draw.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
And finally, some international news. We had the final Euros qualifiers this week, which means we now know the 16 teams that will be taking on this European competition. We already knew some of them. We knew Switzerland as hosts would be there. We knew some of the top teams, but the ones from the Nations League B fought it out, and we now have our top 16.
Should we rip through them quickly?
Let's do it. So we have, obviously, Switzerland, and then Spain, Germany, and France. They are in pot 1. This is important. We'll talk about that in a minute. In pot 2, we had Italy, Iceland, Denmark, and England. Pot 3 is the Netherlands, Sweden, Norway, and Belgium. And pot 4 is Finland, Poland, Portugal, and Wales. These pots are, of course, what they will be in when they draw the groups for the group stages, which will kick off in July.
And that draw will actually be Monday, December 16th. So we'll get to talk about all of the groups that we will have set on our final episode before the break on that December 18th episode. So that's also super exciting. Allie, because you mentioned the pots, let's quickly talk about what that draw is and how these pots work for everybody. Because if you want to watch it, you can tune in. This will be streamed. You can watch the actual draw to see who is in which group for the Euros.
Yep, no, absolutely. So the way it works is if you are in a pot with a team, you cannot be in a group with the team. It's done to do with rankings and scoring and how they qualified. I'm not 100% sure how they worked it out, but that's the way it's worked out. So, as I said, in pot 1, you've got the hosts, Switzerland, Spain, Germany, and France. They cannot play each other. They cannot be in the same group. So what will happen is they will do pot 1. They will pick a ball out of the thing and go, right, this team is in group A. Do it again. This team is in group B. And so on and so forth. And then they will move on to pot 2 and do the same. And that is how we will get our 4 groups.
This could mean we could get, for example, Spain, England, the Netherlands all in one group. We could get Germany, England, Netherlands all in one group. We get Germany, England, Sweden all in one group. It's endless. Really, England are only going to feel safe right now if they are in the same group as Switzerland, and otherwise the odds are England are going to have either Spain, Germany, or France. So they're probably, you guys will sit and pray that of those 4 in Group A, you get drawn with Switzerland, because those other 3, woo-wee, that's going to be a fun one.
What I can guarantee will happen, even though it's a random draw, and I use that in air quotes, is I will guarantee Wales will be in the same group as England.
Oh, just because it happens?
It happened in the 2019 World Cup. We had Scotland. It happened in the Euros. We end up with home nations. We end up with home nations in our group. So I can guarantee, even though it's a random draw, Wales were in our group.
We also want to touch on the fact that Scotland has missed out along with the Republic of Ireland. And right before we hit record, Allie was like, you better make sure to say Republic of Ireland and not Ireland. You better clarify exactly what you're talking about. And then here you go. All right, but let's talk about it, because absolute heartbreak for Scotland and the Republic of Ireland. A huge congratulations to Wales, who I feel like we've said so many times, for such a small country, a plethora of incredible talent in terms of women's football. So I'm really excited to see them in this big tournament. But absolutely, Scotland and the Republic of Ireland will be severely missed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is Wales' first senior tournament that they have qualified since they became a national team. So this is super exciting to see them. And we know that the Welsh talent with Hayley Ladd, we've seen Jess Fishlock, there are so many talented Welsh players out there to get them to see on that stage. It is super exciting. For anybody who didn't watch the game, it was against the Republic of Ireland, and so therefore it was definitely a death match of basically who dares wins.
It was also heartbreak for Scotland, which I know you're holding your tongue a little bit about, but say a little bit and say why you're holding your tongue.
Yeah, no, it was heartbreaking for Scotland, but the problem is the fact that they went and only drew their home leg, because anybody doesn't know, these qualifiers were over 2 legs. They drew their home leg 0-0, and then they went in with a really tough ask of having to take on a team in their home country in Helsinki, which was Finland, and Finland just annihilated them, to be honest. It is heartbreaking. I mean, a lot of blame is being laid at the feet of the coach, which we will get into, because the reason I am holding my tongue is, again, if you go onto our Patreon, I am doing a 2-part special on the Scottish national team and where they've come from to where they are going. The first part is up, where I talk about the history and how they've not quite hit markers despite the players that they've had. And then in 2 weeks' time, part 2 will be going up, where we talk about the current situation and what can be done to remedy it.
All this. And you say you don't like international football. Come on now, Allie. I could not be more excited for the Euros. And for those of you listening and perhaps wondering, we will, of course, be covering it. And we are working our little tails off right now to try to see if we can be there in person to cover it. But stay tuned for more of that. And of course, we've mentioned it a couple times already on this episode, but you can always head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/The Show for bonus content every single week and to support the show. And with that being said, that's been it for us this week. We will catch you for the final time in 2024 next Wednesday. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As always, for the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks everyone.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.